Good evening and welcome. That's it'd help if I turn the sound on. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer. And I help you to crack the code of your sleeping dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening I have two short dreams, one of which features a hijacked double decker bus, but we'll find out what that's about. But we'll start with the first dream. And the dreamer reports that they were in a martial arts class of one particular style with a teacher who is teaching a movement that was actually from a totally different style of martial arts and from judo, I believe it is, something called a hold down, a movement called a hold down. And the dreamer expressed surprise that this teacher was showing this particular movement, as it's not something that would normally happen in the class, it would seem. And the dream ends there. The second dream, the dreamer reports that um, they had stolen a double decker bus and which was full of passengers, and he took over the bus by impersonating the driver. Now it's driving along on this bus full of passengers, and it gets to a traffic, well, I mean, a crossroads or a junction, and which leads on to a highway, a motorway. And while sitting there at the red lights, the dreamer is thinking, should I do a runner and just get off this bus, or what? But too late, and the lights change, and he's like, well, I'm gonna have to keep going now, and takes off again on to get onto this highway, but realized that it would have to kind of give this up at some point, and the dream ends there. So you can I can only imagine. It's like what that must have been like. You're sitting at a light. Should I just leave this here and take off? But we'll see what's going on, and hopefully what actually could be connecting the two dreams. Now, in the first dream, the dreamer reports being in one style of martial arts class, but the teacher was showing a movement, specifically called a hold down, from another. And that generated a few questions for me. One is there something maybe about the transferability somehow of skills? It applicable in more than one place, or maybe some kind of cross fertilization going on. But my question for the dreamer here was, why did the dreamer feel surprised about this? What's apparent was apparently a breach of normal practice or behavior. And was the surprise a pleasant one or unpleasant? But there seems to be something here about, because it was the description of this movement started with a transition from one movement to another, with this unusual movement being at the end. And I wonder if there's something here for the dreamer with regard to change or transition of some kind in the dreamer's life. But we'll leave that for the moment and move on to the second dream, where the dreamer hijacks a double decker bus. And my first question here was, why would you want to steal a double decker bus? And but specifically, what does a red double decker bus, which was the image that the dreamer shared, um, what do they mean specifically for the dreamer? Is the well, the buses are normally red, but what is the color red significant in some way? Perhaps in signaling some kind of danger, or maybe you need to stop, or some kind of passionate feeling. What is that red here signifying for the dreamer. And I found it interesting that the dreamer was impersonating the driver, pretending to be the driver to be able to take hold of this bus. And what I have often said is that vehicles of one kind, or traveling of one kind or another, represents literally our journey through life. So sometimes we're on foot, sometimes we're in a plane, sometimes we're being driven around by someone, sometimes we're doing the driving ourselves. But the transport indicates the speed of driving, and who's driving indicates who's, in a sense, who's in the driver's seat, literally who's in charge. So yeah, is there some area of the dreamer's life where they feel that they have to um, impersonate or imitate some kind of behavior or something or other in order for them to be in charge or to be in the driver's seat? There's something there about almost having to take on maybe like a false persona in order to be able to appear to be in charge or having self agency in some way. And I wonder if that may be an issue where the dreamer doesn't feel that they're in the driver's seat unless they grab it by force or by stealth. Now, the dreamer reports afterwards that it driving along and finally reaches this junction where there's an on ramp onto a highway or motorway, so indicating that things are going to start moving quite quickly. But he's got this kind of little time frame or space to be able to make a decision. But not making a decision is making a decision. He didn't decide anything, and in the end, ended up having to go along because the light turned green, and he was going to hold up traffic. But even as he did that, he realized that at some point this journey was going to have to stop, and he was going to have to stop being this runaway bus driver. Again, we have red appearing, and this is a red light. You know, the light is against the dreamer in the dream. So again, there's something that may be significant about the color red, and I would ask the dreamer to think about that. What does red represent for the dreamer? But despite having these ruminations about what to do, the masquerade continued, and he continued on onto this highway, masquerading as the driver of this double-decker bus. Now, he knew he had to stop, but it's like, well, not just yet. Just like, okay, why didn't you just, kind of like not take the on ramp, just, or get off at the next stop, maybe. But I just wonder why. Why did the dreamer feel that it was necessary to continue? That there was no way, there was no point of return, there was no, like thinking in terms of a on ramp, that there must have been an auxiliary road on the side that could simply have taken that rather than getting on the on ramp. And my question here for the dreamer is, is it possible that the dreamer feels a need somewhere in their life to carry on in a particular role, or which may not feel natural, or has to be stolen in some way in order to be able to get where they're going? And there seems something about movement, but also about movement that isn't genuine, perhaps. It's something for the dreamer to think about, perhaps. Now, to look at these two dreams, it took me, I have to admit, a little bit of time to think about what the connections between the two dreams were, because when dreams are dreamt in close proximity, whether the same night or within a few days or week of each other, they generally are related in some way. There's a narrative going on, and they're using different, think of different scenes in a movie. But what I felt might be the connections here is something about not being true, or not being, um, what's expected or normal, whatever normal means. But I think of this unusual martial arts movement that was introduced into a different style of martial arts class. The hijacking of a bus, and the movie Speed came to my head into my head for some reason with that. But both cases, it was acting out of character. There was something that was just not within the normal process of things, if you will. And my question here is there some area of the dreamer's life where acting out of character, um, or perhaps in different ways, that may not be entirely true to the dreamer or transparent in some way? There's a lack of transparency in some way. Um, there just seems to be there's something about, um, doing things outside of the normal way of doing things, perhaps. And then we look at this. Then with the second dream, you have this color red, which seems to be stamped all over it. Red bus, red lights. There's something about buses, though, that it's a common form of transport, but being hijacked by somebody pretending to be the driver is not the norm. So there's something perhaps about going against the normal or common route, a common way of doing things, and perhaps that those passengers kind of represent, groupthink, or the social norms, perhaps, the norms that everybody observes, or at least should understand, perhaps. And there's this hijacking of this bus. It's taking a common thing and doing something uncommon with it. There you go again. It's things that's not in the normal run of things. And I wonder here if there's some area of the dreamer's life where they may feel like hijacking the established rules and regulations and ways of moving, to take control of his particular journey, which is his journey through life. So I just wanted, there seems to be something there about, shaking up the rules a bit, and doing things slightly differently, outside of the norm. Um, but it's the only way, hijacking that is the only way that the dreamer feels that they can do it. Ooh, itchy nose. So that's where what I was able to pull out of this dream. And there's always more things you can pull out of a dream, especially when you leave them for a time and come back to them. And actually, I think I'm going to go back into my archives and look at, some of the client responses to dreams that we've worked on together, and just to get an idea of how it may have shifted things for them. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.